Match.com, Chemistry.com, eHarmony.com, and JD. Just some of the ways people of our generation meet their special someone. But doesn't one obvious thing seem missing? Where has the traditional values of dating gone? What happened to the days where you met someone at a bar, at school, or a normal social setting? Today, television and the media has convinced our generation that the key to finding a normal, everyday relationship is through online dating and social networks. However, what's not shown on the television commercials and online advertisements is the failed relationships and the dangerous aspects and side effects of these websites. Online cyberstalking and online abuse can lead to physical stalking and abuse. So why do we sit at home every night and complain, watching these online stories on Dateline and NBC, wondering why does this happen when every day we put ourselves in these situations when we look up for friendships on the internet? The time is now. The time is now to put a stop to these online dating companies. The less we use them, the more the businesses will suffer, and soon enough, they will disband, decreasing the amount of relationship-based internet crime. In the 1800s, the key to dating was through courtship, through courting a man and a woman to find the real motives and emotions towards each other. Today, however, technology has completely changed the way we date. In a recent article to Caroline Hacks, a Washington Post columnist, a 35-year-old single woman writes about her frustrations over the evolutions of dating. She says, "Part of it is that I find online dating tedious and false, which rules out a giant avenue for meeting men, I understand. But I prefer connecting the old-fashioned way. I'm not on Facebook either, and my experience has taught me you can't identify a potential match based on a two-dimensional photo and a self-description that tells little about how two people might relate. How does Match.com and MySpace truly reveal our identities to one another? For example, suppose you're online one day and you meet a member who claims to be an 18-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio. Let's say they say they're about 150 pounds. What goes to say that this information is true? What goes to say that this is their true identity? Several websites do not have reference check systems in place to make sure that the inputted information is 100% accurate. So this 18-year-old man from Cleveland could actually be a 45-year-old from Jacksonville, Florida, weighing 375 pounds. In fact, what goes to say that this male is actually a male? Online websites give you the chance to recreate yourself, and unfortunately sometimes not for the better. Now, not knowing these true identities can lead to a plethora of problems. First off, many people believe that once you establish a bond with someone, it's okay to send your personal and private information. Well, we all know that's wrong. Granted, this can happen whether you meet someone online or at a bar, but when you do this online, you're not physically seeing where your information is going as you say it, and that can lead to a plethora of problems. I'm sure many of you have seen NBC's Datelines, To Catch a Predator. On this show, they catch these perpetrators in the act as they show up at the victim's doorsteps. The show uses fake personas and addresses to portray the victims, but this happens on a daily basis to many people of all ages because they're exchanging personal and private information. Now, the key to this is that these victims become victims of fraud, abuse, and unfortunately sometimes even murder. Now, what's the best way to stay away from this and not have this become you? Well, simply put, the best way is to not put your personal information on in the first place. Now, these dangers should always be in the back of your mind, especially as a college student. In Paul Bajic's novel, Cyberstalking, Harassment in the Internet Age and How to Protect Your Family, Bajic emphasizes the current epidemic of internet crime today. He states in the following passage, "While cyberstalking has become a worldwide problem, most cases originate in the United States, making Americans the most vulnerable group of targets." Taking it a step further, Jane Hitchcock, her foundation called Working to Halt Online Abuse, recently published statistics that looked at the 2008 cases. Out of 234 cases, 35% of the victims were aged 18 to 30 years old. Sounds a lot like college students. And taking it at even a more local level, Florida ranks 4th out of the top 10 locations for internet crime. Looking at these statistics should be big enough reason to edit your profiles If you're not going to delete your profiles, especially in an age and a college setting where Facebook pretty much runs your social circle, at least edit them, especially when it's for your own safety. Now, another problem with online dating is that it tends to lead to stalking. Cyberstalking can easily elevate to physical stalking. When I was a senior in high school, I became a victim of this tragic offense. You may be thinking, well, how'd you get yourself into that one? Well, simply put, it's something we do every day. Facebook. A fellow classmate had friend requested me, and without thinking, since it was the same high school, I accepted. Little did I know, he was using my profile to gain personal and private information about my life. He saw under hobbies that I put running, and began showing up at my cross-country practices. He saw under employment where I put my job, and then he began showing up there soon. In fact, I had no idea how bad it was until I found out he was printing out my profile pictures and pasting them around his room. Now, I will admit, I am to blame. I should never put this information and publish it on the internet in the first place. But at the time, I was too naive to think it would happen to me. And so are many victims of internet crime. The truth is, we think, oh, it will never happen to me, but it does. You cannot control what other people do, especially when you're not seeing them on a face-to-face basis. Think about it. Would you give your personal and private information to someone on the subway because they had nice eyes? No. You wouldn't because they're a stranger. And that same principle should go with online dating. Online dating takes away the personal contact between two people in the early fundamental stages of getting to know one another. And television and media pretty much has replaced everything. But let's not let it replace dating. MySpace and Match.com have two things in common. They're online social networks and they're both unsafe. If you use these and you use them improperly, you can become a victim of fraud, abuse, stalking, and unfortunately sometimes even death. So edit your profiles. Take out the information that doesn't belong before you too become a victim.
Someone hit the stop button.